Well, hello there, everybody, and fine viewers. Welcome to the Western Standard. This is the Cory Morgan Show. I am not Cora Morgan. I am Lindsay Wilson of Link Strategies. I'm filling in for my very good friend, Cory Morgan, who is traveling abroad right now. John, would you kindly put up a photo of Cory Morgan just so people can remember what he looks like? Excellent. Yes, this fine looking gentleman right here, he is currently overseas. He is traveling, I believe, in Israel right now. So I'm sure when he returns to take his show back on, he will come here with lots of photos and stories and adventures. So, Cory, we wish you well. Please travel safely and make it back home to tell us all about it. Well, folks, it's been quite the election week here in Alberta. And if you're a political junkie living and working in this space like yours truly, you've probably got more questions than answers coming out of this one. Because what we've just witnessed in Calgary and Edmonton is a tipping point for how politics at the local levels played and how the province regulates it. Let's start with the basics: turnout. Or more accurately, the lack thereof. Just 33% of Calgarians cast a ballot, and worse yet, in Edmonton, 30%. Is that democracy in action or on life support? To make matters worse, the process itself threw up unnecessary obstacles. As reported at the Western Standard, Alberta held course on eliminating electronic vote tabulators in favor of paper-only system, and the results were exactly what you'd expect: long lines, delays in counting, confusion. And in some political polling stations, the lineups were stretched so long that voters just left rather than wait. We heard reports that some areas were taking 2 to 3 hours for voters to cast their ballots, and all signs point to people just getting fed up and leaving. If you already think that local government has lost your interest, being confronted with a voting experience that looks like it was designed for the 1980s doesn't help. But for those who did vote, the results sent a message. In Calgary, Jeremy Pathfinder Farkas made history. He became the first person to unseat a sitting Calgary mayor since Ralph Klein did so back in 1980. That's 45 years, folks. And the margin? Fewer than 600 votes. Separated him from Sonia Sharp of the community's First Party. It's a thin win. And while Sharp has officially called for a recount, as most candidates would in her position, it's pretty fair to assume that it would be a long shot and fairly safe to say it won't lead to a change in the mayor's chair. Trailing behind them were outgoing Mayor Jody Gondek, plus Jeff Davison and Brian Thiessen. Respectable showings, but not enough to close the gap. Up the road in Edmonton, no upheaval. The mayor was reelected for a third term. Clean, predictable, no major shakeup. So we have two snapshots here in our major cities. Calgary voted for change. Edmonton chose continuity. Now, was this election a referendum on local leadership? Certainly. But was it also a giant middle finger to the creeping party system in municipal politics? I would argue yes. Let's talk about Bill 20. In short, it's the provincial legislation that opened the door for formal political parties at the municipal level, increased oversight of municipalities, changed donation rules, all in the name of, quote, leveling the playing field. It was piloted this election cycle in Calgary and Edmonton. A conservative political government wanted to create a path for conservative candidates to keep up with more left-leaning candidates, many of whom were very well funded by the unions. But the shakeout wasn't exactly a dream come true, and with a majority of newly elected officials being independents, some may call the entire experiment a total bust. Instead of clarity, we saw fragmentation. And where the center-right should have coalesced, we got competing flags, vote splitting, brand confusion, and outright mudslinging. There is a saying that conservatives simply can't and won't unite, and that they eat their own. Progressives didn't completely dominate, but they quietly benefited. But the story doesn't stop there. On the provincial front, we now learn the government is preparing yet another bill, and this time to limit who can run in political elections. According to recent reporting, the bill would give new rules to ensure only those who truly care and are serious about representing the community get on the ballot. I'm not quite sure what that means, but the government says that it's about transparency and it's about clarity, but critics warn it can easily become a gatekeeping mechanism. So imagine that. At the local level, we have Bill 20, stirring up the party game in our cities. And at the provincial level, the governing party is now talking about a bill to decide who can stand for election. It's two big structural changes, two big questions, and a lot of controversy. Does the province stick with this experiment and try to refine it? Or does it blow the whole thing up before the next municipal cycle? And that cycle starts today. Because if the idea was to build a stronger, more coherent conservative presence in Alberta cities, that just didn't happen. Now, first time isn't always a charm, and it does take time for people to take on change. After all, there are municipal parties in cities like Vancouver and Montreal. But what we got this time around was instead voter fatigue, fractured campaigns, and a perception that local issues are being overshadowed by partisan maneuvering. The most important piece is that Calgarians didn't just reject incumbents, many rejected being told which team to vote for. They're tired of ideology being measured in snow plowing schedules and pothole contracts and zoning decisions. Excuse me. They want delivery. They want competence. They want to believe that their vote moves something real and not just fuels another political turf war. So where does this leave us? We have a brand new mayor in Calgary after decades of continuity, a steady incumbent in Edmonton, and a frustrated electorate. A provincial legislation that's tinkering with both the local and provincial electoral machinery, and a conservative movement that must ask, have we strengthened ourselves or weakened ourselves? There is a lot to unpack out of this election, and we're going to do just that. I'm going to be joined by two guests today who know Alberta politics inside and out. Amber Ruddy, Vice President at Council Public Affairs, and Stephen Carter of Decide Campaigns. He is the man behind campaigns for Alison Redford, Naheed Nenshi, and Jyoti Gondek. We'll hash out what this election really means for the future of Bill 20, for the rise or fall of municipal parties, and what people should expect for the next municipal cycle. And for all of you fine folks watching today, we would like to remind you that the Western Standard needs your support. Please like, share, comment, follow Western Standard News on all our platforms. If you're not a subscriber yet, go to westernstandard.news and click on subscribe. It's just $10 a month or $100 for the year. Thank you for your support. All right, John, I think we are going to get right into it, and we're going to move over to our guests. I don't know if they're waiting there in the rooms and they're ready to go, but I think we will get into it here. So we've got Amber Ruddy. She's a go-to strategist for organizations seeking to navigate Canada's intricate political landscape. Amber transforms complex policy challenges into strategic opportunities for her clients. She also has previously served with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. We will also be joined by Stephen Carter. Stephen Carter is an innovator. He's always pushing the bounds of what is possible. Best known as one of Canada's leading political strategists, he played a leadership role in the rise of Mayor Naheed Nenshi, Premier Alison Redford, Mayor Jyoti Gondek. The National Post, CBC, and other political commentators have always described Stephen as a political mastermind. And this time around, Stephen was involved with the Calgary Party. So folks, let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining me. Amber, thank you. I appreciate you coming out and taking part in this today. And Stephen, thank you very much. So I think we'll open it up, and I think we'll just start with Amber. How was your involvement with this municipal cycle? And maybe compared to other municipal cycles, and then we'll take the same question over to you, Stephen. Oh, I think we can't quite hear you, Amber, or is it just me, John? Oh, you're on. I think you're on mute, Amber.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Excellent. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you.
This election, I do admit I've been more of an observer, having followed quite closely the municipal scenes of Calgary and Edmonton for some time. It was a little bit refreshing to take a backseat on the municipal election coming fresh off of a federal campaign, which I was quite involved with. My observations, look, this is the first time this system has been in place in Alberta. So of course there's going to be growing pains. Of course there's going to be some kinks to work out. But I think frankly, the whole reason the system was put in place is to give voters a bit more transparency in terms of the candidates that they have to vote for. And having that branding, having that bit of organization, I think brings value to the municipal scene. And of course, there's not a sweep of any one candidate or slate across Edmonton or Calgary, but this is democracy. And the incumbency factor is strong. You see a lot of folks that have been in the role were either running as independent because they didn't attach themselves to any one particular party. They fared quite well. And so I don't think that this system is going anywhere. Maybe there will be some tweaks to refine it. But this is democracy. And I frankly think it's a little bit messy, but it works.
Okay, thank you, Amber. And Stephen, over to you. Stephen, just tell us a little bit about your role in this municipal election, and then let's get into your thoughts and how everything kind of fell out.
Yeah, I mean, I was the creator of two parties, one in Calgary and one in Edmonton. so the Calgary party and Better Edmonton parties, we took advantage of the system that Danielle Smith created. I think that she wanted to elect some of her own people under conservative banners. We tried to put in place our own people in more progressive centrist banners. And I think that overall, the system itself worked fairly well. I like the party structure. I agree with Amber. I think it gives us an opportunity to know who it is that we're voting for, what it is that we're voting for. All too often, I think people get elected. For example, Sonia Sharp ran as a progressive in 2021 and then turned into a very strong conservative and ran as a conservative today or in this municipal election. This gives people a better opportunity to know what it is that they're, who it is they're voting for and what their principles are, what their values are, what their ideology is. So I think that it worked out fairly well. The fundraising rules are a disaster. They need to be rewritten immediately. The hand counting, disastrous, needs to be rewritten immediately. But, I'm sure it worked really well in rural municipalities where they were only dealing with small portions of votes. But we have, upwards of 1 million voters in Calgary and 700,000 in Edmonton. Hand counting is just, it was a gong show, and disappointing to see the new rules. But I'm hopeful that the newer rules will be taken advantage of properly.
And I don't doubt that Elections Alberta and Elections Calgary is just flooded with complaints. I mean, transparency. Of course, most people watching this will know that I worked very closely on the Jeff Davison campaign, and Jeff ran for mayor and came in fourth. And we had an outpouring of supporters who were reaching out to the campaign, and they were cold, they were standing outside, they were waiting 2 and 3 hours. Particularly heard a lot of reports in around downtown polling stations as well as in the deep south. I'm sure it was just luck of the draw wherever people were throughout the city, but some people said it was a good experience. But we definitely, I would say, in my experience with elections, there was an outpouring of complaints and people just simply walking away from polling stations, which I know for those of us who are really engaged in municipal politics, that's really frustrating. We're always trying to get people to buy into municipal politics. After all, it is the level of politics that affects you the most on the day-to-day. This is what affects, the snow plowing and your garbage pickup and your property taxes. Mostly, it's provincial as well, but these are all the things that affect you the most, and yet people have the least amount of engagement. Amber, over to you. You were very involved with the federal election campaign in the spring, and I know over on our side we felt very much that voter fatigue had a part to play in this, and it was a very slow uptick into people even being engaged or interested. I mean, I don't know, Stephen, you might agree with me. Like, I feel like nobody was really paying attention to who was running for mayor and didn't even have any idea who was running for council in Calgary. And you can probably chime in a little bit more about how that was in Edmonton. They didn't even pay attention until maybe the last 7 to 10 days. So Amber, how much do you think that voter fatigue played into it? And then Stephen, we'll go over to you on your thoughts on engagement.
I think it is important, going back to the conversation about the voting and the lines and the new system, it is important to do a process that instills confidence, because when you have systems that aren't working for folks and are driving a reluctance to vote because they feel like it might not count and the way it's processed is not fair, there's different iterations of how that has played out. I know some folks wanted to write it in pen, or, there's different considerations. I think we do need to take seriously people's concerns so that they have confidence in the system when they do spend an hour or whatever it is that they had to take and go in line and do that. So first of all, just want to say that there's got to be a pendulum. There's maybe some things they can do to improve it. But I think it is important to take those concerns of voters seriously. When you look at overall, there is a fatigue. And again, if you follow the news, you might be hearing rumors that a federal election could be imminent. I think, it is a layering on of issues. The municipal levels, of course, closest to the people, you're most likely to drive down a street with potholes, need to book swimming lessons for your kids, want to go to a public library and use those services. So it is important. And I'm glad we've had this kind of participation in Calgary, for example. The incumbency factor strong, but our incumbent mayor, she's moving on. And it is important to have choices in the system so that people can make those decisions. So I think that overall, there are probably a bit more reflecting and lessons we can learn as the sort of ink dries on the voting results and we see who are in these roles. But I'm very confident that the system will be improved and continue to work for Albertans going forward.
And then Stephen, voter fatigue from the federal election, and then let's throw in this teacher strike. I mean, this has been wild, right? The last couple of weeks, and how do you think that impacted the election? I know some of the candidates, including Brian Thiessen, had a lot to say about the teacher strike, certainly. So over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we had a significant number of headwinds, if you will. The federal election was certainly a headwind. It was hard to get people's attention during the campaign. I agree with you, pushing through and trying to get people to actually pay attention on this campaign. We certainly noticed an uptick in attention in the last week and a half, the last 10 days, but we'd already done half of advanced polling before people had even started to pay attention. I mean, yes, it is the most difficult level of government to get people out to vote for, but let's take a look at the actual statistics. Voter turnout was down in Edmonton on advanced polls, down in Calgary in advanced polls, down in Edmonton on voting day, down in Calgary on voting day. Why? Well, in part, it was the teacher strike. In part, it was the Blue Jays game. In part, it was people not really caring about municipal government. But in part, it was rumors of long lineups, people not wanting to give up an hour and a half. We have a world standard elections organization in Elections Canada. And we can't seem to figure out how to run a municipal election in Alberta. And that just makes me crazy. The rules changing the way that they did was a significant impediment to people being able to actually vote in the election this time. And I think that that the provincial government needs to take a look at that and say, what role did we play and how are we going to make it better? So far, what they're indicating is that they're going to make it harder to run. Which on some levels I support. I think that we do have a lot of candidates who are a little bit junky, if you will, if you're running for a stunt. I'd like the candidates that run to be legitimate candidates that have the resources, volunteer and otherwise, to actually run a campaign. But that's not our primary problem. Our primary problem is how do we get people out to vote? I'd like to see more provincial support in terms of advertising that the municipal election is happening. We could have used a lot of that. Elections Canada does so much advertising to make sure that people know that the vote is occurring. And we had none of that really in Calgary, Edmonton, or the balance of Alberta.
Yeah, and certainly the province was really busy. There was a lot of announcements over the last month, from new license plates to a war with the ATA, and certainly that did overshadow things. What about the Conservative predicament? And Stephen, I really am, as somebody's a little bit more on the other side of things, I'm really interested in your perspective about this. There was a lot of mudslinging, and that was between certainly the Sharpen Communities First campaign, Jeff Davison campaign. There was a lot. There was some bad blood that was created there, and I'm sure everybody can, sow these seeds of division, right, as we come to a close with this election. But are there changes that could happen structurally, do you guys think, where to prevent, say, two Conservative parties or two more progressive parties from coming up that would prevent this, quote, vote split? We've heard this term vote split over and over and over, right? Some people say, we love democracy, we love the choice. And others say, well, no, this is vote splitting and you're stopping this person from getting in and we all just need to get behind a candidate. So there's so many different ways to unpack what that really means. And I know one of the thoughts is that you make it harder. You make it so a party has to go out and get X amount of signatures, make that a really high threshold. So you're not going to have a bunch of different parties and groups running around and doing that. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Amber, I'll let you start with that one.
Yeah, and just to layer on another issue, the Canada Post strike, not having your voter cards and information, that's a very obvious thing to be advertised, and added another step in the voting booth where you had to go and you didn't have a card to present, right? You had to go through an extra step. So that slowed things down as well. So almost a perfect storm of issues. I just wanted to touch upon briefly this issue about having legitimate candidates in elections. And I think the impetus of this, of course, if you've been following federal with the last by-election in Battle River Crowfoot with the longest ballot, there are some provisions I think you can do to tighten it up. I think over 100 of those candidates, for example, had the same CFO, like the person that's signing off on the document was the same person for 100 of those candidates. We could add a bit more heft to make it so that this is a serious exercise and that it's not becoming a way to make a statement. So I'm a firm believer of that. But yeah, overall, I think it is just an interesting time, and I like that there's choice. I don't think it would be great, in my opinion, to have a bit of a higher threshold, and if you could bring along with it, maybe if you are a serious party, that you would get access to a voters list, because that's something that happens provincially and federally. So that could perhaps weed out having too many parties that are all trying to act in an interest if the signature level of what you needed to create that party was higher. So maybe there could be a carrot and stick approach of, if the voters list was a certain higher threshold, being able to offer that to the serious parties, I think would be an improvement.
Okay, Stephen, over to you. I mean, some thoughts on this quote vote split, and what's your advice maybe to conservatives, and maybe we can take it far more generally than that. What do we do to not have just all these quote competing parties?
Well, I think that competition is essential in politics, and I don't like the term vote split. You earn the votes. We all started at zero. Davison started at zero. We started at zero, right? That's just the nature of the game. I think you earn your votes. But if you really are concerned about vote split, let's take that premise and just take it through. My recommendation would be to put a preferential ballot in place. Why not put a preferential ballot in place for municipal politics? It would be fascinating to see who would actually get over the 50% threshold. Would it be progressives? Would it be conservatives? Would it be centrists? I don't know. I actually wouldn't be able to tell you with 100% accuracy where the Brian Thiessen vote would have gone after the first ballot. I don't think it would have gone en masse to Jeremy Farkas, Josie Gondek. I think that it would have gone, it would have split into 4 or 5, 4 different directions for sure. The same would be held with Jeff Davison. I don't think that Jeff Davison is the same type of roaring conservative that Sonia Sharp was trying to present herself as. I would have loved to have seen a preferential ballot. I also would have loved to have seen a voters list. Amber is completely right. Not having a voting list was just that, and the postal strike. Amber, I'm glad you brought both of those up. They were devastating to these campaigns. I had 500,000 pieces of mail that were supposed to land the day that the postal strike started. We had to essentially send trucks to go and get them back so we could try and hand deliver 500,000 pieces of mail, which is impossible. So this, Amber's come up with 2 great ideas, but I think bottom line, all of this needs to be looked at in the future so that we wind up with the right type of civic government. If the provincial government thinks that the most of the voters are conservative, then bring in preferential ballot. Go for it. It is an opportunity to change our voter system in a way that doesn't impact the provincial election. It doesn't impact the federal election. Give it a go. See if it works. See if we like it as Albertans. If you're going to be messing around with the election anyways, mess around with the election in such a fashion that it actually makes a difference.
Yeah, and this was a pilot project, right? And the province had put it forward, hey, this is a pilot project. We're going to try it in Calgary. We're going to try it in Edmonton. So, I mean, we have to, have a little bit of grace for that, right? Everything is a pilot project. You look at it, you're like, okay, what went wrong? And clearly a lot of things went wrong, but some things went right. I think a lot of people could look at this election objectively. Certainly in Calgary, I mean, in Edmonton, you definitely got a lot more of the same. It's more continuity up there. But I think certainly in Calgary, there seems to be I feel like things were dialed a little bit more to the middle. I mean, I'm very optimistic that a good group can be put together, and people will bring a little bit more balance back to City Hall, and because it's not healthy for democracy when we have things like a recall Gondek petition, and we have such an unhappy electorate, right? We just, it's not healthy for us as as a city to have people just pitted against one another, and like this extreme division in politics. I mean, I've always been one for multi-partisanship and bringing things a little bit more to the center, and maybe this path will help us get there. So Stephen, you folks over at the Calgary Party ran, I'd say you'd ran a very polite campaign, and I think there was a lot of people that were expecting a little bit more. You've definitely, you're one of the most creative people in politics, and you definitely sometimes can drop a few bombs, but I mean, your folks ran a very polite campaign. So any thoughts on kind of your candidates and how it all kind of laid out for you, and Brian Thiessen himself, and what's next for Brian Thiessen? Because I think there's a lot of us that thought, I think that Brian Thiessen is getting ready to do something maybe at a provincial level. And I know you can't probably say too much to that, but just wanted your thoughts.
Well, I think that the challenge for us was who to attack. We knew that we were definitely coming from fifth place. So who do we attack, right? We attacked Sonia quite a bit in the debates. I called her Sonia Smith Sharp. That was the level that we wanted to go to. We didn't want to go to anything too personal or pushing too hard. And we just felt like our best bet was to run a positive campaign, especially with the Davison and Sharp campaigns taking such nasty smacks at one another. It just felt like it wasn't necessary for us. And attacking Jeremy Farkas, we tried a couple of times, but it just didn't have the legs. So we wound up actually going after Danielle Smith, which did have legs. We did very well with that part of the campaign. Obviously not well enough to win. So the Western Standard viewer made me turning over and getting a little bit more angry about that. But for our voters, it worked quite well. And one of the, I think, challenges that Tim Cartmell had in Edmonton was not running a more negative campaign against the conservative, the UCP and the government there. Tim was pegged as the UCP candidate, and I think that was an unfair positioning, but did nothing to unpush that narrative. So this is the challenge with campaigns: is when do you go negative? People who were running against Naheed Nenshi remember that he was one of the most negative campaigners we'd ever seen in Canadian municipal politics. But Brian wasn't that guy. Brian just did not want to attack unless it was 100% required, and it just wasn't in this campaign. It just didn't require us to open up the bag of dirty tricks, and I'm glad we didn't. It was a good campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we go over to you, Amber, John, do we have anybody with some questions on the live stream feed? Happy to read out a couple of these questions. So, okay. Jacqueline says post office strike had nothing to do with apathy. Just pull out your driver's license. Well, fair, Jacqueline. I mean, obviously you're a dedicated voter, but I guess some people aren't. Let's see, what do we have here? We got Paul. Paul says electronics can be manipulated, marks on paper, so simple marks manipulation makes manipulation more difficult. Use a pen, not a pencil. Yeah, we did hear a lot of people that were complaining about that. I think there's a little bit of lack of understanding around that, like, because when you make the pencil mark, it can't be erased. And Amber, maybe you can just kind of answer that question for somebody who's concerned about not using a pen and using a pencil instead.
I mean, I think what the election authorities often say is that the pens, like if they order in bulk, dry out, so they have pencils on hand because then you can reuse them, and they have they're standing by. But like, I have confidence in our voting system that the ballot boxes are sealed, that the appropriate scrutineers are available for each candidate to observe, and so I have confidence in the system. But I know some folks have reluctance. I just wanted to go back and comment a little bit about, I agree with Stephen that nobody's voters belong to somebody else. So if you look at the Edmonton example, you can't just simply take the conservative leaning candidates, add them together and assume that the top vote getter would have got those votes naturally. I think we're at a bit of a crosshairs in terms of what is the conservative position, because blanket rezoning happened to be a top municipal topic, and you don't really see consistency. There's not like a conservative position on that, and frankly, you see different people coming at it, progressives and conservatives coming at it from similar angles. So I think it's not so cut and dry in terms of what is a conservative position on X municipal issue. So the creativity that those candidates have to come up with to brand themselves and showcase what type of positions they would take is, you know, a new kind of way to look at it. And there's no monolithic, I'm a conservative, I'm voting for this person, right? You have to be able to offer ideas that resonate. And if you can't do that, then sorry, your vote doesn't necessarily belong to somebody else. So I think that's something that we have to get past. And if you want to enhance, perhaps there's ways we can enhance those parties that you think might be the best option going forward for a specific voter to park their vote.
Yeah, and I like some of what we're talking about today, right? I like a higher threshold, maybe not so high. I mean, there's a lot of thought around that. I like a higher threshold. I really like the voter list, Stephen. It's you know, that's really important, and I think all of us really suffered from that, certainly. So those are things that I really like. But yeah, I mean, I personally don't like the term vote split, because, you know, if this is democracy and this is democracy in action, then may the best candidate win, right? So I don't like that, and it was definitely a driving force in the narrative, and certainly I think that won the Community's First Party and their candidate Sonia Sharp. Now, speaking of that, no, that was a very close mayor's race, and I think some of us were very surprised. I know certainly on our camp we were very surprised, but that it happened, and it's a margin of almost 600 votes that separated new mayor-elect Jeremy Farkas from Sonia Sharp of the Community's First team. And you know, I think any good campaign manager would absolutely say, yeah, you know, call for a recount. I think it's fair to say it would be very surprising if the results were anything different than having mayor-elect become the mayor, Jeremy Farkas. But Jeremy Farkas, you know, that's I have a history with Jeremy. I worked for him in the Ward 11 office when he was a councillor before. I worked for him for almost 2.5 years. And, you know, I felt that there was a change in his position. I think most of us did. But, you know, he ran a very smart campaign, and he catered to everybody. So he catered to the left, he catered to the right. It was confusing for some. I'm interested to see how that will play out in his office, if it will be a very centrist office, or if it'll revert back to more conservative people behind him, or if it'll stay on the left side. So, Stephen, I really want to hear your thoughts on the new mayor-elect Jeremy Farkas, who certainly, with, I think it was a 26%, correct me if I'm wrong, that's not a strong mandate. So that's, I think, Jeremy being you know, the very dedicated campaigner, and I know he's taking this very seriously. I think, you know, he's got his mandate is, hey guys, I'm here for you, Calgary. I'm here for all Calgarians. So Stephen, we'll let you start with that, and then we'll carry over to Amber on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge to suggest he even has a mandate, right? Like he's been elected by less than 100,000 people of a 1.6 million person city. He has a lot of work to do. His vote total dropped significantly from 2021. 2021, he was a much more popular politician than he is in 2025, but he won. And, you know, this is where the challenge is, how does he create a cohesive council when, frankly, he's got, you know, some really rabid progressives. I mean, I know that conservatives sometimes dislike conservatives, but I'll tell you, there's no feud like the inter-progressive war, I'll tell you that. Blood tests all around just to make sure that you're the right level of progressive. But this, you know, he's got some people who are just rabid also on the right wing. You know, Landon Johnson, not really a conciliatory type of fellow. I mean, he ran the Recall Gondek campaign. He's going to be a big voice in municipal government. How does he work with Jeremy? I think he would have worked really well with Jeremy 1.0. Jeremy 2.0, I'm not sure he works well with at all. So I'm just dying to see how Jeremy takes this extremely small mandate, both in terms of a level of victory and overall number of votes, and turns it into something that Calgarians rally behind. The way that we rallied behind Dave Brown-Kanye, the way that we rallied behind Lindsay, Ralph Klein. This is fascinating. This is the first time that a incumbent mayor has lost in Calgary since Ralph Klein beat Rod Sykes in 1980. So this is a significant election from that point of view as well.
I think we're all interested, Amber, we'll go over to you here. We're all interested, we all remember, and that's who I used to work for, was Jeremy 1.0, and that was, he was the rabble rouser, and he stood on the soapbox, and he was, the man of the people, right? And from in his term from 2017 to 2021, I guess. And we're seeing a different version of Jeremy. Is this a more mature Jeremy? Is this a more collaborative Jeremy? Because I would argue that whoever is leading the city, you have to be collaborative. It's one of the number one skill sets. For me, that's why I got behind Jeff Davison. I saw that he had that ability to bridge the left and the right. Will Jeremy be able to do that? Amber, what do you think?
I mean, it's a first past the post system, and he won. And I think that we have to get behind him. As our mayor, we're facing a lot of different things that are going on in the context, and we need a strong voice for Calgary. And I think we need to give him the room to create that collaborative culture. He's been signaling, I've seen in his social media posts, he's already been meeting with some of the folks that are coming forward and have been elected as we sort of hear all the results coming in and things are finalized. And I have confidence that he's going to put his best foot forward. I think he might surround himself with some folks in his advisory capacity to the right of him and some to the left of him. And that's probably where you need a mayor to be. This isn't partisan politics anymore. There's some major projects that we need to get forward. We need to have some discussions with the federal government on some very important projects. And frankly, let's just give him the space to see what he's able to do. He's one vote on a council, and the more that he can try to collaborate with his colleagues and set a better tone. We've had some toxic councils. That maybe they got more votes for a certain thing, but look how sideways things have gone. And the fact that Gondak didn't come in second, I think speaks volume to a change type of election. And I'm hopeful. I'm just going to be optimistic that he puts his best foot forward, and let's give him the space to do that and see how he lands.
And I think we have to do that, right? We have to be positive, and we have to build bridges, not walls. So I too wish Jeremy Farkas all the best, and I hope he surrounds himself with some really excellent people and governs with collaboration as he moves forward as the next mayor. So I guess we'll kind of wind down the show with going into just a little bit about what's happening in some of these in some of the councillor positions. So Landon Johnson's very interesting. He won. He had very strong numbers. So, all the best to him with that. But certainly there's a lot of buzz that he is Jeremy 1.0 and that he's going to be, quote, the new Jeremy. So I too am interested to see how that'll play out. That it will be really interesting. I do feel there's a lot of people that kind of hover around the center, kind of both ways. I'm trying to think if there's any other really, really big personalities in there. I know we've got a couple of recounts coming. So I think it's just the mayor recount coming, which I don't know that we'll see any really different results. But Ward 12. Now that, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that differentiation is 29. So that would be the Alberta Calgary Party, or the ABC Party. That would be their one seat in this election, which would be Mike Jamieson in Ward 12. And then that's the Calgary Party candidate, Sarah Ferguson, who's up against him there. So tell me a little bit about that and what you think about some of where these councillors landed.
Counted by machine election, I think it would be much less optimism on our side. But because it is hand counted and the process does have a little bit more room for error, so we're cautiously optimistic. Obviously, when you do a recount, it can go either way, right? You don't know if there's mistakes, number one, and number two, you don't know the direction that the mistakes are made. When there was a recount in 2021 with DJ Kelly versus Sean Chu wound up getting a larger number. So we'll see how things go in 2025 for Ward 12. I think that the number's too big for the mayor's chair, 500 plus. strikes me as too big of an error rate. But 29 in Ward 12, like I say, it could go either way, but we are cautiously optimistic that we'll find Sarah Ferguson in council instead of Mike Jameson.
Yeah, very interesting. I think, John, we'll go to some of the comments here. What do we got here? We've got Wayne Lustel. We need to get rid of municipal politics. Nobody shows up to vote. Amber, can you take that question on? And when people, there is a little bit of that idea out there. And what do you say to those folks who are just like, get rid of it. Let the province just take it all over or whatever. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, when you look at the federal and provincial system, we do go through redistribution after every census because you do want to have some representatives that can speak for you and that are accessible because they have a fair number of voters that they would deal with. And I think municipally, you're sort of the closest to the people. And in fact, there could probably be a case made, fair representation would add a few councillors over time, but I'll leave that conversation for another chat.
Certainly. Do we have any more questions in there, John? All right, guys. Well, I think we're going to bring it to just some final closes. I mean, Stephen, like your overall, like, what's your takeaway from this election, and what do you want everybody who's watching this to know about what went down and what you want to see moving forward?
Well, first, let me address the importance of municipal politics. The ability to reach your representative and get your pothole filled, and the ability for water to go uphill and poop to go downhill are super important. We can't be pretending that the provincial government is going to step in and do any better job. That just frustrates the heck out of me. The overall election. Edmonton said they wanted change and they kept the same. Calgary got a massive change. We'll see how these two governments approach the provincial government, how they approach the federal government, and how things change in the next 4 years. Our cities are in the midst of huge change, especially Calgary with our population growth. But these changes are going to need to be met by really quality municipal government, and I wish the best to all those who want.
All right, and Amber, over to you. What are your some thoughts? And I said in my opening monologue today, was this election, as far as Calgary is concerned, was this election like a giant middle finger to the party system? Because as of right now, as of today, we have one from the ABC, we have one from the Calgary Party. Carter, is that correct? There's one.
Yeah, DJ Kelly.
And then, yep. And then we have two from Communities First, technically four, although I think most of us would argue that Ward 10 with Andre Chabot and Ward 13 with Dan McLean, they would have been elected regardless of the party system was really a complete wash for either one of them. So, you technically have four with Communities First, but really only two of those would have been viewed as part of the party system. So what do you think about that, Amber?
Again, I think the party system is in its infancy. I think we're going to see it grow. And I thought that it added a transparency. I thought that it added that level of branding and organization, and perhaps that helped, like you say, each party got at least one candidate through, right? So I think that shows that, that's democracy. I don't think you necessarily would expect to have an entire sweep of one party taking over the whole system. And there's differences in how the parties operated, right? Like some were more like slates, while others were more like parties, right? So like if you look at how A Better Calgary had members and tried to do votes and tried to, hold their grassroots type of style. Well, the Communities First was more like a slate. It was like, who is the candidate that they can field for a specific seat? So I think these things are going to evolve, and I look forward to what the next iteration does. And I hope it brings us even higher quality folks that continue to want to step forward, given the context of how tough it is to be an elected official. I think we should commend everybody that did put their name forward, and thank those that will be serving us for the next term here as they face some challenging discussions with Ottawa, with the provincial government, and with other municipalities in the region. So I'm hopeful that it will, we'll see better things the next iteration.
And I think I just want to add that I think it is interesting, just very quickly, it is really interesting how the party versus slate, right? Maybe it's fair to say Calgary Party was a little bit of both, but Calgary Party was very clear. We are a party, we're running together, and that was very clear on their branding and signage. ABC was very clear, we're a party, and that was very clear on their branding and their signage. And it wasn't as clear with Communities First. So I'll be interested to see if there's going to be more rules that come around that people, hey, better or worse, they want to know, are you with the party or not? And not be able to not tell that from the signage. Stephen, I feel like you just want to jump in for like a really quick comment on that.
Listen, I mean, they wanted the best of both worlds. They wanted to run as independents, and Terry Wong was a member of Communities First too. People forget because he never, ever acknowledged that he was part of it. So he wants the benefit of being part of a party, and the benefit was fundraising. The benefit was the capacity on a lot of different things, and they want the benefit, but he doesn't want to take the hit, if you will. I don't know anything about it. I mean, we went to the debates, and it was like, Communities First. I don't know what that is. I mean, first
Very
of
interesting.
all, very pleased that Terry Wong lost. Nonetheless, we move on.
And fair enough, but you know what? Very interesting. That's very good. I think folks, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So you take a stand, right? And you stand and you're with the party, or you're not. And either way, but I think a little bit of clarity in the next election wouldn't hurt all of us.
A principled stand is best, always.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you. I just want to thank you guys so much. Stephen Carter from Decide Campaigns and Amber Ruddy from Council Public Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us today. Folks, just thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this valuable. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your comments. And, for all of you watching today, just want to remind you, Western Standard needs your support. Like, share, comment, follow Western Standard News, follow on all the platforms. And if you are not a subscriber yet, you can head on over to westernstandard.news and you can subscribe. It's just $10 a month or $100 for the year. And we'll just one more time, John, we'll bring up my friend Cory Morgan's photo back up here. You are going to see this handsome guy. He's going to return. This is his show. This is not my show. I am not Cory Morgan. I am Lindsay Wilson of Link Strategies. Thank you all. Thank you to all of you voters, all of you listeners. Like and share and subscribe to independent media, and always get out there to vote. Thank you.